Well, thank you for asking me to tell about the beginnings of St. Anne's Guest Home. It's really interesting how St. Anne's began. You know, it actually started in Fargo, North Dakota, not Grand Forks. And how that happened was there were Royal Knights of the Road, Knights, Royal Knights of the Road. Those are men who rode the rails, who rode on the boxcars and went from place to place that way. Well, in 1944, the these men, their health did not really let them do that anymore. They just couldn't ride the rails. They needed a place where they could sit down and live a life of security, especially because of their health. So the Catholic Charities of Fargo started a home for them. They got a building, and they opened it up, and these men were there, living there. And 9 months later, we sisters were asked to take over this home for them and to have and to serve them. So, and we actually ended up with 12 men. And we called it St. Anne's Guest Home because we treated them as guests and gave them respect and dignity, which they really needed. And they were pretty grateful for that. But then in the early 1950s, it was discovered that a number of elderly in the area also needed a place to call home where someone cared for them as it was, you know, and it gave them stability and served them and their needs. And so Bishop Dworshak, well, we could, there were more, we could hold 20 people in there, but there were a whole lot more. Oh, by the way, there ended up with 12 of these Royal Knights of the Road, and we called them our 12 apostles. So, as I said, the elderly needed a home, and so, but the Fargo location, that was just, it only held 20 people, and so that wasn't way too small. But at the same time in Grand Forks, the St. Michael's Hospital was no longer able to serve the needs of that hospital, so they built a new one on Columbia Road, a new hospital, and so here this older building is empty. So Bishop Dworshak, he really encouraged our sisters to purchase that building and make it into a home for elderly. And so we did. And then this is the interesting part. How, okay, here's this big building. It has 5 stories. There's the the first floor, second floor, third floor, and fourth floor. So 5 of the hospital, and attached was another building, and that was, I believe, 3 stories plus the ground floor. And that was really the nurses' home because there was a college of nursing to go with the hospital. So here's this huge empty building, cold. And so our sisters drove up and they saw it and they thought, okay, we need to clean this place really needs cleaning. So here are our sisters. They found some mops and some pails and rags and everything, brooms, dustpans, and they started cleaning. As they had an area cleaned up and even decorated, they would take residents could move in. So then they would take another section and clean that up real good and decorate it. And they had more. By they actually ended up with 120 residents in this home. And one floor was where the sisters lived. That was the third floor on the nurses' home. So anyway, this is how this went, and things were going along pretty good But there was always that one thing, fire inspection. The fire chief would come, and of course you have your yearly inspection. Well, he just wasn't too sure about this older building. There were dead end corridors, where you have a stairway here and a hallway, but there's no stairway on this end. Now that doesn't work for fire safety. And also that on this, the roof was wooden, so that wasn't good. So finally, yeah, I believe it was in 1978, the fire marshal said, I just can't approve your building anymore. You either need to discontinue your service or you need to find another location. Well, here we are. We got to start. What do we do? We sisters, what should we do? Where would we didn't really want to quit, but where should we go? So a committee, friends of ours, they organized a committee formed, and they called it Friends of St. Anne's. And I remember how they planned and talked and met every once in a while, and then they had different people and um, different ideas and different people that were of different jobs. So some were contractors, some were uh, people who knew just how to do things like this. And there was this St. James Religious Education building. What it actually was, it used to be the convent um, on 17th Street. It used to be, and Fifth Avenue, it used to be the St. James Convent for the Josephite sisters from St. Paul who staffed all the schools, St. Mary's, St. Michael's School, and St. James High School. Well, they became lesser in numbers as time went on, so they actually lived in a house rather than this larger convent. So, but it was St. James Religious Education Center where there were retreats and people could take out and rent uh, videos, religious videos for their CCD classes and things that you couldn't just let discontinue that. So anyway, they were able to find a house for the St. James Religious Education Center, and then it began. So then it was decided that we would move into this convent. And at the same time, there was the possibility of applying for a HUD grant or a HUD um, subsidized housing, but the building had to be built first. But there was this, there was land right what was north of the convent. There was plenty of land there, and sure enough, we were able to get the HUD loan and to build this HUD subsidized housing of 30 apartments, which were then connected with an atrium to the former convent, which then became the basic care home. So the fire marshal, he was satisfied. He was happy, and we also were able to connect with the North Dakota Long-Term Care Association and get a license and the proper license and everything. And so here we are, 70 years later, um, with a basic care facility and a 30-bed HUD subsidized housing. And I remember quite a few. I was living, well, I've been here 50 years, so I was with part of this move and decision making. But I remember when we moved in 1981, when we moved from the former St. Anne's, which the hospital, the old hospital, to the new St. James Convent, which then became basic care. I remember there was a auction. We auctioned off a number of our furniture and possessions of because we didn't need that much over in the new where we currently are. And I remember um, as this piece of furniture, I think it was a cabinet, was auctioned off at the audit. It was downtown, and as it was being moved across the stage, I thought, oh, I actually got tears because it was kind of like, we were being, part of us was being auctioned off. And I remember the sisters telling the stories of how they scrubbed and how cold it was and but they continued and I God bless every one of those sisters. God bless and reward them. God bless and reward all the people, the friends this of St. Anne's who helped us be here now today, and that we can serve our Lord's people with his graces in St. Anne's guest home. Thank you.